Before there was a United States, there was chaos. Before freedom, there was fear. And before the stars and stripes, there was blood. The year was 1775. 13 British colonies along the eastern coast of North America were boiling with anger. Taxes without representation, soldiers quartered in homes. Voices of protest echoed through Boston taverns and Philadelphia halls. The people called themselves colonists, but in their hearts, they were already something else: rebels. On April 19, 1775, at dawn on a quiet green in Lexington, Massachusetts, 700 British redcoats faced 77 colonial militiamen. "Lay down your arms!" shouted the British commander. Silence. Then, a single gunshot. No one knows who fired it, but that shot would ignite a revolution. The redcoats fired in return. Bodies fell. Smoke filled the air. When the British advanced to Concord, they found the militias waiting, behind stone walls hidden in trees, firing from every side. The British retreated to Boston, but they didn't march home victorious. They limped back, harassed every step of the way, losing nearly 300 men. A war had begun. Not for land, not for taxes, for liberty. Just a few months later, on June 17, 1775, colonial forces fortified a hill overlooking Boston Harbor, Breed's Hill, not Bunker Hill, as legend says. The British, 2,200 strong, marched uphill in perfect formation. The Americans had little ammunition. Their commander, William Prescott, shouted the immortal words, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." The first British assault failed. The second broke apart under heavy fire. On the third, the Americans ran out of powder. The redcoats surged forward, bayonets flashing. When it was over, the British had won the hill but lost over 1,000 men. The colonists, though defeated, proved they could stand against the world's most powerful army. Boston's skyline burned that night, but so did the idea of independence. The Declaration of Independence was freshly signed, but the young nation was fragile. General George Washington, commanding the Continental Army, faced the British invasion of New York City. General William Howe arrived with 32,000 troops and 400 ships, the largest force ever sent overseas. The Americans were outmatched. The British struck hard at the Battle of Long Island. Washington's army was surrounded, trapped. Then, under the cover of night and fog, he ordered a silent retreat across the East River. "The wind was with them," wrote a British officer. "It was as if Providence itself guided their escape." New York fell to the British, who would occupy it for most of the war, but Washington lived to fight another day, and that would change everything. On Christmas night, 1776, it was freezing. Washington's army was starving, demoralized, and ready to dissolve. But as snow and ice lashed the Delaware River, Washington took a desperate gamble. He crossed the river with 2,400 men, rowing through chunks of ice, wrapped in rags and hope. At dawn, they struck the enemy camp at Trenton, New Jersey, held by 1,400 German Hessian mercenaries. The attack was swift, brutal, and complete. The Americans captured nearly the entire force with minimal losses. It was more than a victory. It was a resurrection. The world had thought the revolution was dead. Now it roared back to life. Just 1 week later, on January 3, 1777, Washington marched again, striking at Princeton. During the battle, his troops began to break. Washington rode straight into the gunfire, shouting, "Follow me!" Miraculously, the lines reformed. The Americans charged and drove the British back. It was a small battle, but psychologically massive. For the first time, the British were in retreat, and the revolution had heroes. The British then launched a new plan: to cut New England off from the rest of the colonies. General John Burgoyne marched south from Canada with 7,000 men, but the Americans, under Horatio Gates and Benedict Arnold, trapped them near Saratoga, New York. The fighting was savage. Muskets roared, and cannons shook the earth. Arnold, reckless and fearless, led charges that turned the tide. Burgoyne surrendered his entire army, 5,800 men, to the Americans. It was a victory so stunning that it changed global politics. Across the ocean, France took notice. In 1778, the French joined the war, bringing ships, soldiers, and money. The revolution was no longer a rebellion. It was a world war. During the winter of 1777-78, Washington's army camped at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. It was hell on earth. 10,000 men with no shoes, no food, and no blankets. Frostbite, disease, and hunger claimed thousands. But amid the suffering came discipline. A Prussian officer, Baron von Steuben, drilled the men relentlessly. They learned formation, precision, and pride. When they emerged in spring, The ragged army that had once fled at New York now marched like a machine. They were soldiers, a witness wrote, made from misery. In June 1778, the British, retreating from Philadelphia, met Washington's army near Monmouth, New Jersey. It was blazing hot. Soldiers collapsed from heat stroke. The battle raged for hours. A famous legend was born. Molly Pitcher, a woman who carried water to men in battle, took her husband's cannon when he fell. Though the battle ended in stalemate, the Continental Army stood its ground. The lesson of Valley Forge had been learned. From 1779 to 1781, the British shifted focus south, hoping Loyalists would rise up. They captured Savannah and Charleston, devastating blows. At Camden, General Horatio Gates was crushed, but in the Carolina backcountry, resistance flared. Fighters like Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, waged guerrilla war, ambushes, hit-and-runs, and night raids. At Cowpens in 1781, American General Daniel Morgan tricked the British with a feigned retreat, then turned and annihilated them. The momentum shifted again. In October 1781, the British Army under General Cornwallis had retreated to Yorktown, Virginia, expecting reinforcements from the sea. But Washington, now joined by French troops under General Rochambeau, saw his chance. With the help of the French Navy, commanded by Admiral de Grasse, the British were trapped by land and sea. The siege began. Cannon fire thundered day and night. The earth shook. The British defenses crumbled. On October 19, 1781, Cornwallis surrendered his entire army, 8,000 men. Witnesses said the British band played a song called "The World Turned Upside Down." And it had. 2 years later, the Treaty of Paris was signed. Britain recognized the independence of the United States of America. The cost? Over 25,000 Americans dead, 25,000 wounded, and a new nation buried under debt. But they had won the impossible. A handful of colonies had defeated the world's greatest empire. "These are the times that try men's souls," Thomas Paine had written, and indeed they did. Freedom was not given. It was fought for, inch by inch, hill by hill, drop by drop. From Lexington's first shot to Yorktown's surrender, the American Revolution was not one story. It was thousands. Farmers, blacksmiths, slaves, women, and generals, all driven by one belief: that the future could belong to them. They did not fight for riches. They fought so their children could live without a king. The revolution was not born in glory, it was born in struggle, and from the smoke of its battles rose a nation that would change the world. If you believe freedom came easy, think again. Every victory in history was paid for in blood. This is Blood and Fortune, where every story reminds us fortune always comes with blood. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that history tried to forget.